faith stories,
My now wife Chelsea was like, "Hey, you're coming to church with me on Sunday," and I was like, "All right, I've been looking at the Bible. Let's do this."
fishing memories.
When I first started, I was just fish, focus on the fish. And I see the kid catch a fish, I'm like, good job, perfect, awesome. And then he goes up there and I'm like, we're catching slot snook. And this kid's up here going, oh, the breeze. I'm like, this is exactly what it's about.
Meaningful conversations.
You have to stay in the Word. You have to have a good support system. You have to know what the end goal is. You have to know who God is.
Positivity. This is the Faith and Fishing Podcast. Your hosts, Cam Steele.
If your identity is you're an angler, whenever you're not doing well in the water, that's whenever you can't be content.
And Robert Randolph.
And his timing is perfect. We might not always agree with it, and we might not always understand it at the moment.
Bring you interviews with some amazing guests from the fishing community and discuss all things to do with fishing and their faith. Welcome to the faith.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
Hey, and I'm Robert.
And it's just the two of us this week, but we're gonna have some fun. But first, Robert, how's it going, man?
Man, it's going pretty good. Busy week, some changeover stuff at work going on, and my daughter's team made the softball playoff. So what we thought was the last game last week was not, and so they won. They won yesterday, which would have been a Tuesday, and they play again Friday. So that'd be the second round of the state playoffs, and so hopefully they keep advancing because it's their senior season, and that would be nice to extend it for a few more games, make a little run at it. But other than that, that's really all I've been up to. What about you?
Well, just it's been a crazy week for us too. But I actually got to go fishing over the weekend, and
Yeah.
it was a solid day. I sent you some pictures, but
Yeah.
the highlight for sure, I caught my first North Carolina citation fish, or at least it's the first one I submitted and actually got a citation for. I don't know if I've caught another one or not, but this is the first one that I did submit, and yeah, I caught a white crappie. It was a weird bite. It bit a DT6, and
There you go.
and I was like, man, this is a little bass. It was just barely lip hooked, just barely skinned hook on the lip, and it felt so tiny. And then like it got a little bit stronger. It's like, this is weird. What is this? And I saw it shine as it turned and the profile faced me in the sun. I was like, what is that? Because it didn't even dawn on me that it could be a crappie as big as it was.
Yeah.
And and I got it up and I was like, oh my gosh, that's got to be a record. Let me get it in the net. Got it in the net, grabbed my phone, looked up what the state record was, and then I got it on the scale. Not a little crappie by any stretch of the imagination, but it was less than half a pound short of breaking the North Carolina state record. It's a little over 16 inches long, and almost 12 inches tall. It was just a he's got the picture there for those listening, but yeah, I mean, this thing was massive for a crappie, dinner plate size. Yeah. So that was pretty awesome. I think I ended up catching 5 bass, all of them on a Texas rig. And I got to catch them the way I like to catch them, in the grass and the shallow water. Most of them were males that were garden fry, getting back into like pushing my way past the primrose into a couple of openings and catching them right at the edge of the grass or in little holes in the grass. So that was a lot of fun pulling them out of there, even the ones that were little. the 5, if it were a tournament situation, would have gone for somewhere around 75, 76 inches. The biggest one was last cast of the day. And it was like, there's usually one hanging around up here. Let me just flip over here, see if I can get something. I felt my weight hit the bottom, and then I felt another tap, and I was like, there's one. And I set the hook on it, and it barely moved. I was like, oh, this is a good one. And it was a 21 incher,
Yeah.
spawned out. But man, that one was fun, and it was right in front of a whole bunch of people that like crowded around and were asking
That's good.
questions the whole time. And I was like, "Shut up! Just let me land this fish, and then I'll answer every question you got." Uh,
That's good stuff.
and there was one family sitting there on the dock that I caught that fish under, and the little boy was like, he had a grocery bag and was like dipping it in the water, and there was a hole in the grocery bag, and he was pouring it into a little water bottle, and he was catching little bass fry that were that
Yeah.
big. That was really cool. His mom said that he was ate up with all things fish too. So she had a whole bunch of questions about the fish that I was catching and everything. So that
Cool.
was really solid day. Best day on the water I've had in a long time. So that was
Good deal.
a lot of fun. Um, the weather did not end up being as bad as predicted, so I ended up taking my rain bibs off and getting some sunburn on my legs. But
There you
um,
go. Yeah.
it
That was a good deal.
it was a really really solid day. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looked like Saturday was a good fishing day for North Carolina. I was kind of looking at the results for the Falls Lake tournament, and we were actually in Rock Hill playing basketball. So, or I wasn't playing basketball. Ryder was playing basketball. I was just watching them play. Um, but it looked like those guys caught a lot of fish up there too at the. I think they dubbed that like the Carolina Classic or something like that. Okay, yeah. So it looked like they caught a lot of fish too. There was a lot of fish posted on that, and looked like everybody had a good time. You had a good day that day, so that overcast, kind of rainy day, kind of paid off. So it's a good
Yeah,
deal.
yeah. Right before the front came through Sunday. So yeah, it was solid for sure, and it's been raining every day since,
Yeah.
off and on. It's currently raining outside right now, so there's potential for some severe storms. So if all of a sudden I'm just gone, it might be that we lost power. But yeah, so we've got a uh, fun episode this week. We are going to be uh, going through some start bench cut on some different categories. So, I figured it was time to do something a little bit different, something fun that the two of us could get some conversations going,
I
maybe
like it.
chase some rabbit holes or rabbit trails, all that good stuff. So
Yep.
um, let's think get outdoors, and then let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle is one of the largest canoe, kayak, and cycling retailers in the Southeast, with a huge selection of kayaks, canoes, bikes, and all the accessories needed to experience paddling and cycling comfortably and safely. Get Outdoors helps to expand and educate the paddling community through their free demos held on local lakes in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, and through in-store clinics and on the water courses and demos, and will even get your new boat rigged up for kayak fishing for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or visit them online at shopgetoutdoors.com to be wowed by their selection.
All right, so I went through and I came up with a few of these, and I'm going to warn you, Robert. I designed these to be difficult. These are not meant to be like obvious choices. Like you're gonna have to cut something you don't want to cut in at least one of them. So,
All
uh,
right.
so let's start with MLF pros. We've got Ott Defoe, Randy Howell, and Skeet Reese.
Okay. So you want to go cut first? Are we starting or benching? What order do you want to go in?
Whatever order makes sense to you. Like if you got to go process of elimination or
Yeah.
however you want to do it.
I'm going to go just the way that it says then start, bench, cut.
All
Start
right.
Defoe, and I'm going to bench Randy Howell, and I'm going to cut Skeet Reese.
Okay. Okay. So I also am cutting Skeet Reese, but I'm going to start Randy.
Yeah.
Just because of the stretch last year of um, breaking the record multiple times with multiple double digit bass. And then, I think it was last week, he had a number 4 finish. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then,
If we're talking about who's finishing and who's hot right now, I totally agree with you. I'm going
uh,
off more emotional. I like Ott's always been one of
oh,
my favorites. So I'm starting
absolutely.
hot, and
Yeah.
then I figured Randy's been on the show, and then so I'm definitely not cutting him. And then kind of
Um,
Skeet was just the odd man out on that. It really wouldn't have mattered who the third one was,
no,
probably. So
Ott has been on the show too, if that sways
yeah,
you anyway. So,
yeah, I know, yeah, I know. But
um,
I'm just saying, like, Ott was my favorite with to take the show out of it, and then
right.
you get down to Randy and Skeet, and I'm like, oh, it's got to be Randy Howell because he's been on the show, and then we're cutting Skeet Reese. Hey, no brainer.
I hear you. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and it doesn't matter what scale you use to do these. If it's a emotional scale or if it's a statistic scale or whatever. But let's jump over to Elite Series pros. We've got Hank Cherry, Jeff Gustafson, and Brandon Pollinet.
Ooh, that's tough, dude. That's tough. Um, so are we just doing it? Are we fishing just a regular tournament, or are we fishing the classic? Because that's going to make a difference. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. Same deal. I'm gonna start polling it. Um, I'm gonna probably bench Gussie, and then as bad as I hate to say it, I'd cut Hank Cherry. Like you can't even say that, really. I feel I can't even get the words out. What'd you say? I'll cut Hank Cherry. You know, what I mean? Like so yeah, that's what I would go with. But honestly, those are three of my favorite people to watch, and so I'm not sure why you picked those three, but I like all three of those dudes. So really you could have put that into a bag and drew the names out, and I would have been fine with that. But I do like Pollinate because I like his YouTube stuff. And then Gussie went on the Tennessee River, and I like the way that he did that. That was a different deal, and I've fished that before. It was he fished that in a very northern style and beat the crap out of people. And it's something nobody else was doing. And then, I mean, if it's the classic, I would have had Hank starting because he just seems to figure stuff out there. But yeah, I like all three of those guys.
So the reason I picked those three is because you've got the back-to-back winner in Hank Cherry.
Yeah,
You've got Brandon Polinick, who is like as close as, like he's up there in the upper echelon, and just everybody loves him. And then you've got Jeff Gustafson, who is probably the most likable guy in the
yeah,
whole trail. So um, I am going to have to cut Gussie though.
yeah,
And obviously starting Polinick, and then got the back-to-back winner of the classic and in the bench position.
yeah. I
So
mean, that's it. Like I said, you could have put those all in a paper bag and drew names. I would have been okay with any of those. So yeah, that's a tough one, but that's good.
now this next one is going to be probably harder for you because we're going pro kayak anglers.
All right.
I've got Drew Gregory, Christine Fisher, and Jody Queen.
Yeah, I might not answer that question. I mean, same thing. I mean, number one, you couldn't pick. Let's forget the angling side of it. You couldn't pick three better people to group together. Having talked to each one of those and stayed with Drew at a Santee Cooper BOS in the same house. And, just talking to Jody some on the show and then at Cashin a few times. And then talking with Christine at a couple of the Hobie events and on the show, and Drew on the show. They've all been on the show. But, so honestly, if I was having to start, bench, and cut those three, I would do it by kind of what the event is and where it was and what it was fishing. And then having said that, I would say no matter what order you put those in, you're just as liable as any of the three to win an event, no matter what. You can say if it was a river, Christine would be the odd angler out. But she's liable to go cave your teeth in on that too. She's liable just to win it just the same. And the lake, I'd probably give, if it was strictly lake, I'd probably give the edge to Christine and Jody, and Drew would be the odd man out. So if you're going to make me pick on no parameters, um, I'm going to probably go. I'm gonna probably go Jody Queen. I'd start because I feel like um, maybe he is the statesman of the bunch, and he deserves that spot. Maybe slightly more than the other two, just because maybe age. So don't get mad at me for that. But the other one, I feel like I would probably bench Christine, and then I would probably have to cut Drew. Now, having said that, like I said, I love all three of those people, and so if you got to have that, that's what I would do. So, what about you now?
So everything that you just said was completely accurate in terms of like I love these people. These are like the best of the best in our sport, and not just in terms of their angling abilities, but in terms of who they are as people. Um, but I'm starting Drew because he has the most hardware, um, or at least he has the most what's the word? He has the most
I know what you're saying.
yeah. He's
Everybody
got
listening knows what you're saying too.
he's got the classic win. He's got the Angler of the Year. He's got the Hobie Angler of the Year. So I mean, he's got the big name trophies.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to
And
base it off of that, I totally agree.
and he fishes the way I like to fish. And he uh, like most of what he does is on with a paddle. So I love the fact that he does that. Um, Now the other two, gosh, it like as I was typing it, like I was like, man, it hurts my soul to have to cut one of these people. But I'm cutting Jody. And it's nothing like it's nothing but respect for everybody there and nothing but love for everybody there. But
I
um,
got you.
but Christine is just uh, I have fished against her. I have not fished against Jody. And I have, like
No, I'm with you.
I am more familiar with her game in terms of fishing than I am Jody's.
Yeah.
So I know Jody likes to fish a lot of the same way I do too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm just more
Oh,
familiar
yeah.
with her work. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna edge her out, but not by much.
Yeah. So when you have the start, bench, cut, you actually would really have to have. So you obviously you're doing three things in a category. But so the next time you do this, you actually got to have like one like semi bad thing because I mean, you know what I mean? Like, but I guess the whole point of it is to generate the conversation about, oh, all of these three things are great. Now
Right.
you have to pick and choose. But I do find it interesting that we both had Christine in the middle, then we had our ends flip flopped. And like I said, you could put Christine at the top, or you could put her at the bottom of those two. And actually, if you said, "Hey, we're going to this body of water," they're all going to be there for 4 days pre-fishing. If you gave me the parameters, I could give you the reasons why I did the 1, 2, and 3 because I
Right.
know kind of just by listening and watching their YouTube stuff. And Drew's been on a ton of podcasts, and he doesn't have as much YouTube stuff out, but he has way more podcast content than the other two because he loves to get on. He loves to talk. So I could tell you both kind of, or all three kind of what they do pre-fishing, how they kind of break down stuff, and it's three three different ways that they do it, but the one thing they all have in common is they all three have a system, and they're all three um, very consistent in executing the system when they go pre-fish water, and that's why all three of those anglers are very successful. So for those of you that want to get into tournament fishing, go look up all three of those guys on social media or YouTube podcast, and you can find an episode where they're talking about breaking down water and take some notes, figure out your own style, be consistent with it, and you'll end up being way more successful. And that's those things I'm still working on because I, think that I'm super busy and I don't really make enough time to pre-fish and have a consistent system to have the success that I wish I had. So
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, Drew Gregory taught me how to scout water without being at the lake using different apps and maps and things. Christine Fisher taught me how to skip. So like, I mean, there it is. All right, so let's move on from individuals and more like so this time we're going to do fishing techniques, topwater, finesse, and cranking.
okay, so I'm going to take these in not the most fish catching, but what I like to do. So I'm going to go top water, and then I'm going to go finesse actually, and then cranking is number three. So we're going to start uh, top water. You're going to bench the finesse, and you're going to cut the cranking.
Okay,
There you go.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm starting cranking, going the same way you do, just going by what I enjoy. Cranking is number one. I'm benching finesse because I don't want to cut finesse because I like to fish year round, and during the dead of winter,
You need
you
it.
gotta have your finesse game,
Hmm.
which means that I'm cutting top water, which I
Yeah.
cannot believe I'm saying, but I am.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the top water bite is why everybody fishes. So that's why I started it. But I do agree with your assessment of if I'm talking about I can only keep two of these year round, and we're talking about year round, not just maybe the next 2 weeks, then I would definitely agree with you. Top water is what I use the least, but I enjoy it the most.
Right.
I probably catch the least amount of fish on top water, but enjoy it the most. And then my kind of go to where I know I can always put some fish in the boat most of the time is that finesse, shaky head, whatever, soft plastic kind of deal. And then the cranking, you know, you got to work to crank all day. I mean, your arm's going to fall off, but a lot of times it pays off. And then sometimes you catch a couple early and you just keep cranking all day, and then the rest of the, you know, 1,000 cast after the first four are garbage. But I don't usually figure that out until the next day when I'm, you know, thinking about what I should have done.
All right. Let's talk spring fishing. Pre-spawn, pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn.
Mhm. Yeah, that's an easy one for me. I would rather, I'll start pre-spawn. I'll go in the order that it comes in. I'll bench spawn, and then, well, then I would cut post spawn. But the only caveat to that is if you're talking about I'm going to go one day during each of these, that's the order it would be in. Now, if I have to pick, I would definitely cut spawn because that's the shorter window. I'd rather have pre-spawn and post-spawn because those are longer fishing times. But if I'm only going one day in each of those, I would definitely cut the post-spawn and I'd keep spawn. I just like the spawn. I like to be able to sight fish some. I think that's, a cool aspect, but it's not very long. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you?
So swap spawn and post spawn.
I figure that's what you'd go.
So, and the only reason there is, pre-spawn is typically when I'm going to catch my big fish.
Mhm.
Is that time, and then post spawn over the past few years has been when I catch my most fish. And then spawn was really fun whenever I was, fishing the park pond from the bank, and it was the few times that I could really get on them. But like it's a good time to catch big fish, but um, it's not my sweet spot, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah. For that spawn bite to work out, I find that I don't go enough to really get the best days for that, and it's really a lucky day if I'm going once every 2 weeks during the spawn. Let's say I only go one time. Normally, the day that I have, the wind's going to be blowing, so you can't sight fish anyway. And then you have a hard time locating and getting the fish to bite because you can't see the beds, you can't see the fish, and I think it is harder to catch. But you know, if you go on a calm day, as it's pretty good. Like I've had a few days on Harris where you can see the beds, you can see the fish, and you can absolutely lay the hammer down on them. But if the wind was blowing 10 miles an hour, I would never have caught any of those fish. So that has a lot to do with it too.
For sure. So I was listening to another podcast, Bass After Dark. If you have not listened to that one, definitely check it out. Ken Duke and Brian the Carpenter have typically a panel of three people to kind of debate a hot topic in the fishing world. And the a couple weeks ago, our buddy Ben Ricks was on. They were asking the question: should tournaments be allowed during the spawn? And I was wondering what your thoughts on that were, Robert.
Okay, so I haven't heard
Go
that
down the rabbit
podcast.
hole.
Yeah, yeah. No, I haven't heard that podcast, so it'll be interesting to see how my thoughts match up with what Ben said. And for those of you that don't know, Ben Ricks is a biologist here in North Carolina, so he's probably pretty well versed on the effect that fishing during that spawn season has on fish, which I'm going to say is really minimal, is what I'm thinking that he would have said on that, but I could be wrong. So, should fishing tournaments be allowed during the spawn? And I think you're probably asking this from a conservation aspect.
I think that's what this podcast was really asking.
I would say that's the way you're asking the question. So on a conservation um, side of it, I would say it doesn't really affect the fish population. So I would say, yeah, I would say the way that most or all states do them now. I don't know if that there's any states that limit it during the spawn. I know that the northern states sometimes their bass season, so to speak, doesn't open up until particular dates. I don't know how that lines up with their spawns. There may be some states up there that do have cutoff during certain times. I don't know that, but
No,
I,
Canada does.
yeah, I think in the South and for where I fish at, I don't know any states that do that, and so Yeah, I'm good with that as far as having tournaments in, and then really, if somebody tried to argue with me about it, about oh, it's no fair, you can see the fish and there's no sport in it, or whatever they want to say, um, you can see them every day now with live scope. So you tell me the difference in sight fishing or sight fishing with your eyes or sight fishing with the screen and the live scope. And the wind doesn't matter for live scope. You have to have a calm day to really work that with your eyes. But the live scope, you can use that every day, and you can still see the fish. And you can probably see more fish with live scope than you can sight fishing. So,
Okay. So
what about you?
what about from a non conservationist standpoint?
So the non-conservationist like tournament side of it, um, there's a couple of different tournament sides of it. One would be the competitor. If I'm entering a tournament, would I want to be a competitor and enter a tournament during the spawn? And for me, I like it. I like to fish the spawn. I mean, we just rated that, so I'm good with fishing tournaments in the spawn. The second thing would be the competition side of it and the competitiveness as the tournament director, or who if I'm putting on the tournament. And I would say that it probably takes some of the skill and competition out of it. I like the spawn because I can see the fish and I can see, oh, there's my target. There's the fish right there. And I'm going to flip in there 15 or 16 times or until I get bored with it and try to see if I can make that fish bite my lure. And so the competitive side of it, you know, as a tournament director, I think it does take some of the skill out of it, but you still have to find the beds and you have to find the fish. And then I had another point, but I may have just forgotten. Um, I was going to tie it back into something else, and it may have been the live scope thought again. I mean, I think that this next year you're going to see some tournament organizations move away from that, or you're going to see some limits on transducers and screens. Um, I don't know what tournament organizations or what each one will do or how they will differ, but there's already been some tournaments that have been held without it that I've been hearing some feedback on other social media podcasts that, and I forget the tournament that it just happened, but it was only maybe 3 weeks, a month ago back now, and it was pretty well received, and it was a no live scope type deal. So I think you're going to see some tournament organizations move away from that. So to me, it'd be the same thing during the spawn and having live scope. Same.
Okay.
What about you?
So from a conservationist standpoint, I'm there with you. I the impact is going to be pretty minimal. If anything, it's going to be helpful. It helps slow down the population spread of the bass, since bass anglers are so allergic to eating bass. Um, but from a competitor standpoint, it makes no difference to me. The odds of me fishing on the right day during the spawn in a tournament are extremely low.
Yeah.
I will say this from a spectator standpoint, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, um, but I wish that the like the elite pros, the elite series, the MLF, even throw NPFL in there and some others. Like, I would love to see them move away from chasing the spawn, because throughout the season they start in Florida and move up, and they're trying to hit the spawn all the way up. And I would really love to see them move away from that for a couple different reasons. I know they never will, because the big fish are what what draws in viewers that are not anglers. But those of us that are anglers, I think I'm not alone. I would love to see them put together patterns on the toughest days in the toughest waters at the toughest time of year, because the NBA does not play on 8-foot rims. So why are we trying to put professional anglers on the water only at the time that would be the best day for them to be on the water?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought process there. So yeah, I'm good with that. But I do think it all boils back down to the TV dollars, the money, the viewership. And
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely correct in your assessment of I don't think that will change as far as how they schedule tournaments now. I would like to see it, it used to be there were fall tournaments as well for the Elite Series, and now it's over with. I think by August or something silly like that.
right.
I would like to see maybe a split in the middle. They try to do that northern swing when the south weather gets super hot. But I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of the spring tournaments move to the fall. Still do a few spring tournaments, do that northern swing with a couple of tournaments in the north, whatever. I like to watch that stuff too because they absolutely crush the smallmouth in those. But then swing back down to the south during the fall, do a couple in the fall, and then finish out your year with whatever championship. I think all the championships should be at the end of the season. Like I don't really particularly care for. I know this is way off the subject of what we're talking about, but I don't particularly care for having the season that ends and then the championship is the next spring.
Right.
Like you don't do that in football. You don't have the Super Bowl in the start of the next year. How
Yeah.
dumb is that? I mean, you talk about momentum, and you got these dudes now. You know, whatever Red Crest and the Classic, two different animals altogether. Because if it's Red Crest, it's either going to be Wheeler or Connell, and they're dominating this year. I mean, you can just turn the TV off and put your money on one of those two. But the Classic's the same way. You qualify for it the year before. I say give it 6 weeks in between. And I know there's a lot of logistic stuff with the Classic, and it's a big expo show as well. But they could figure out how to make that happen. Do
Yeah.
it at the end of the season. Same with Red Crest. Do it at the end of the season. Have a fall. Boom, it's done. And then you start out the year brand new. You're not doing a couple of tournaments and then doing Red Crest, and you're not doing a couple of elite tournaments and then the Classic that qualified from last year. In that crap in the same year.
I agree with that. But yeah, like my favorite tournaments to follow and to watch are the ones on the Sabine River where, they're little bags and they have to work every second to get the
13 pounds
weight
a day.
down. Yeah. Um, like whenever you're going to weigh in with 11 pounds and you're like, I have a shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That'd be my kind of tournament, except that my bag would be like 2 pounds. It'd only be one fish,
um,
maybe a pound and a half if it was just one.
but yeah, that's awesome. That ended up sparking some good conversation there. I love
Oh
it.
yeah.
All right, so uh, going into another really hard one: books of the Bible, Genesis, John, and Psalms.
I think you have to start John, you have to bench Psalms, and you have to cut Genesis.
Okay,
And
so
so here's my reasoning behind that. I think without John 3:16, I think you're going to have a pretty tough time getting people to believe in the Bible and
Well, I
have
mean,
faith in it.
it's the thesis statement of the Bible. Like,
Exactly.
and
That's
the
why.
entire thing is summed up in that one verse.
Yeah. So that's why I started that. I think Psalms has so much wisdom in it that it would be a shame to cut it. But at the same time, I mean, I'm really torn between the Psalms and the Genesis because I really think it's important to figure out how it all started as well. So, I mean, really, you could go either way, but I think John is definitely the start. And I'm going to stick with my original answer and go Psalms just because there's so much wisdom there. And I think a lot of people can read Psalms and relate that to their lives. And I think that draws people into the Bible and it helps them like, oh, okay, well, this Psalms here, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. Whereas if you're looking at Old Testament stuff and you're saying this person is related to this person, is related to this person, is related to this person, like nobody wants to read that. I mean, it's not engaging as a reader. To me, it's not. So I'm thinking you got so much wisdom in there, it pulls you in. Let's keep that. And then how it started is super important, but I think if you have to cut one of those three, that's what I would cut. But you can make an argument the other way as well. So
And I'm going to.
yeah, go ahead.
So in Genesis, you have creation, you have Noah, you have Abraham and Isaac, Jacob and Esau. Those five right there alone are enough for me to say Genesis has the edge over Psalms.
All good points.
Psalms is fantastic. Like you said, it's got a lot of wisdom. It's got a lot of stuff that really relates to stuff because it is, there are the praise psalms and the sad psalms and the psalms of lament and songs of like crying out and like for uh, for the from a people in bondage crying out to God to deliver them into freedom. But I'm giving the edge to Genesis, but not by much.
I'm with you. I like that. I like that. Yep.
All right. Let's go David, Paul, and Peter.
I'm going to say start Peter, bench Paul, cut David. And yeah. So, and let me do that. That is 3 books of the Bible that probably I have read through, but I'm probably not very well versed on those 3. So I'm going to let you go and you explain what yours is, and then probably I may say, okay, yeah, that's clicking some memory in my head. But
so going the people and not the books of the Bible.
oh, I got you.
Does
So
that
you're
change your answer? You said Peter, Paul, David.
yeah, I would probably do it almost the exact opposite and go David, Paul, Peter.
So I had it the way you had it originally.
Oh,
I'm starting Peter. The the story of Peter like denying Christ and then being rebuilt on the beach with the feed my sheep speech that gets me every time, and that is you know that's a really powerful one for me. And Peter is the hothead of the group, and then you've got Paul, which is, here's a guy who, like, the ultimate turnaround. If God can use this guy to literally shape Christianity into something more than an offshoot of Judaism, into something for the entire world, then there's not anybody that God can't use, because this guy was hunting down Christians. And then with David, I mean, obviously David is also in that same boat. You get David and Goliath being picked as the king, even though he's the youngest and the littlest. Like, he wasn't even at the meeting at first, whenever Samuel was there picking people, because they were like, oh, it won't be David.
Right.
I mean, you got the story of him and Bathsheba, but Peter and Paul connect to me on a more personal level, and in terms of building the building Christianity into the whole world, rather than just that offshoot of Judaism.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Like, I get more of what you're saying now. So, I agree with that. And, it's a good deal. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. And,
and there are no wrong answers. So
no. And, there's definitely, all the questions you've asked so far are tough choices, and you could really flip flop things. And so that is the point of the questions, is what would you pick? And it's like, oh, why did you pick that? So I like it.
all right. So this one was a very difficult one for me, in a very different way. But I decided to throw out contemporary Christian artists. And I've got Chris Tomlin, Casting Crowns, and Newsboys.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Chris Tomlin, Casting Crowns, and Newsboys, just in the order that you read it.
Okay.
So
Why?
Chris Tomlin, I'm pretty sure I've met him before. And and then Casting Crowns, like, I know some of their stuff. And then the Newsboys, I could probably sing along to their songs, but I couldn't tell you exactly what they are at the moment. So that's the reason I put them in that order.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one was difficult for me, because in my head I thought, dang, I'm gonna have to start one of these bands. Not I'm gonna have to cut one. I'm gonna have to start one.
Okay.
But I will say the other thing that was difficult about it is the Newsboys. So I really liked the Newsboys when Peter Furler was their frontman. Now that it's Michael Tate, I'm not a fan. And Toby Mac and Michael Tate, I will always have beef with, because they were instrumental in breaking apart one of the greatest Christian bands of all time in DC Talk. But so I had never been a huge fan. Well, I really liked Casting Crowns when they first hit that first album. And then after that, it was like, I really am not a huge fan anymore. It's like, as soon as they hit the first note, I know this is Casting Crowns, and I can probably play along and sing along, even though I've never heard this song before.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So because Newsboys is iffy, I really like Peter Furler, but I'm not a fan of the new Newsboys. I'm starting Chris Tomlin because he is a good songwriter. He's a good lyricist, and he is good at what he does. Even if it's not my style, he's good at what he does. He makes songs that are easy for people to sing along with, easy for worship pastors and other people to duplicate. I still remember. I can't remember who was interviewing him, but I remember the interview where I think it was "How Great Is Our God" had just come out, and they were like, "So Chris, tell us about your new song." He said, "Well, I'm Chris Tomlin, so it's in G, and as long as you've got G and a capo, you can play any Chris Tomlin song." But I'm starting Chris Tomlin because he does have a lot of powerful music. I'm benching Casting Crowns because they have some good songs that I have enjoyed. They're not my favorite, but they're consistent. And I am benching Newsboys because they betrayed me and they went with Michael Tate instead of somebody else.
I'm with you.
All right, so I've got two more. In sports, I'm going NBA, NFL, and MLB.
Oh, what are we keeping? What are we cutting? That's super easy. I'm going to say we're starting MLB, and we are benching NFL, and we're cutting NBA.
Okay.
Yep. And I know that's probably not the order you have them in, but I will expand on it a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that the MLB probably has. Some people think this is bad, but I'm on the side that I think it's a good thing that they have stuck to tradition in a lot of ways, and that game has not changed very much. The only exception to that would be the instant replay that's in there now, and at some point you will see them go to some automated strike zones, kind of like the minor leagues are doing now, where you can, if you're the batter or the catcher, you can appeal the pitch and to see if it was a strike or a ball if you think the umpire made the wrong call. I think the NFL, the reason I didn't put it in the top spot, although it is probably by far the most watched and the most popular of the three, I don't care for some of their stances on things in the past 5 to 10 years. And I think a lot of people are turned off by that, and I'm one of them. I do love the game of football. If you would have said sports wise, which football, baseball, or basketball, football would have been definitely number one. It's my sports love of my life. It's what I played the most of. Baseball was second. Basketball was definitely third. But at sports leagues, I'm going to go MLB, NFL, and the NBA. Honestly, if you'd have asked me in the late '80s, early to mid through the '90s, NBA would have been right up there with all three of them. All three of them I love to watch during those time frames. But uh, as they grew and they progressed, they kind of some of them went different ways. But um, when it was my basketball then to me was different than it is now, and obviously everything changes. Everything continues to grow and evolve. But I used to love watching NBA during that time frame, and to me, it's just lost a lot of its luster. I will say the last couple, I've probably watched more NBA games this year and a little bit of last year than I have in a long time. So I think to me, it's recaptured maybe a little bit of that. So that's why I have them ranked that way. I think Major League Baseball is definitely the most boring to watch, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a slower game and a little bit more boring because it's a chess match, and you definitely have to be a student of the game and appreciate all the intricacies and down to what pitch they're throwing and why, and the whole count situations or the batting averages in different counts. There's multiple chess games going on inside of baseball at the same time, and if you dissect it and understand it on that level, a lot more people would be probably tuning into it. But then again, if you're not into that, that's the most boring one to watch. So, uh, which may be your argument for having to cut Major League Baseball in just a second. But so that's why I have it that way. Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA. Your go.
So the only thing worse than playing baseball is watching baseball. I hate baseball, and I have always hated baseball.
Yeah.
I was the kid growing up that if I tried it once and I wasn't good at it, I didn't like it anymore.
Yeah.
And I was not good at baseball right away. And yeah, I never got the bug for baseball. Football is one of those that I can take it or leave it, and basketball, like for basketball, made me give up fishing for years. Like basketball was the love of my life for a very long time. And I grew up in that golden era that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Staying up, watching Michael Jordan beat up on my beloved Jazz. And you know what?
I mean, I like Carl Malone and what's the other guard?
Stockton.
Yeah, Stockton. I like those two guys. I like the Jazz back then, but it's just, yeah, they did beat up on them. That's kind of why I was laughing.
So I'm starting NBA, cutting NFL, or benching NFL and cutting MLB.
Yeah.
I have not watched in an NFL game in 3 seasons, and that's not because of any kind of stances or anything. It's just because I have to budget my time, and
Yeah, I get that.
and NFL is just not important enough to me to sit down and watch the TV for that long.
I,
Um,
I, I am going to add this caveat to one of the best inventions ever is the shortened highlight that you can find on YouTube now of every game, whether it's basketball, football, or baseball. And like I watch more baseball games on the 15-minute highlights of whatever game. You can see the whole game. You don't have to wait and sit or whatever. So we were doing a podcast, maybe last week or the week before. We were talking about something that related, and I almost said it then, but now it's a good opportunity to stick that in there. So for those of you that like sports but don't have the time for it, you can pull up whatever you want to on YouTube, and it is a shortened, condensed version that only shows you the pitches, the hits, passes, and the dunks that matter.
I hear you, and I will say this NBA playoffs that's happening right now is the best NBA playoffs that has happened since the first time Golden State won the championship. It has it's this is the passing of the torch, and those seasons are always special. This is the season, like the playoffs, that it's like, yeah, LeBron, Steph, KD, you done. Um, and these guys, like Ant Man put on a show in the first round. And like, dude is cocky enough that nobody in the world would like him except for the people who like cocky people. But he backs it up, and it's fun watching that happen to someone who was that guy 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, pizza toppings. Last one: pepperoni, sausage, bacon.
So you're gonna have to start pepperoni because it's the OG. I don't think without pepperoni the other two wouldn't exist on a pizza. And then I'm gonna bench bacon because it's bacon. There's no other explanation needed. You're not cutting it. And then you got to cut sausage. There you go.
So I'm
What about
starting
you?
sausage. Because sausage is like that's there are a few things that make pizza, and sausage is up there for me. I sauce of the three, sausage is my favorite, and then pepperoni. You can't get rid of pepperoni. So bacon, I love bacon for breakfast. I love bacon on like a biscuit or something like that. I love bacon on a burger. Bacon on a pizza is one of those things that it's like it's not bad, but it's never something that I'm like, oh, you know what this pizza needs right now? Bacon. Unless it's Canadian bacon.
Yeah.
Then I will say, yeah, I do need that.
I can see where you say that, but my go-to pizza, like my number one, if I'm ordering a pizza, I'm going to make sure I order it is pepperoni and bacon on the same pizza. Like I
Okay.
like that. Yeah, I like those two combined together. So there's
My
no way.
go-to is ham and pineapple. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It figures. I'm just messing with you. Coming from the guy that doesn't like Chick-fil-A, but maybe does now because I know that's kind of wavered in the last little bit.
no, I'm not saying that I like it. I'm just saying I understand
Oh man,
why it's not for me.
yeah, that's
It
cool.
has been
Hey,
explained
sometimes,
why it's not.
yeah, sometimes you just got to be like, yeah, okay, I don't like what everybody else likes. That's cool. I mean, I'm that way in a lot of things. I'm like, I don't see what everybody sees in this product or that product or whatever, Like, I just don't. Earlier my wife said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm going out on the porch for just a second." Well, why are you going out on the porch? Well, because it's quiet and I want to have a breath of fresh air for just 1 second, and then I'm going to come back in. And so I went outside and it felt like it was 95 degrees in damn July tonight for some reason here. And I'm like, I didn't even barely stay out there 2 seconds. She was
It
like,
was
she's like, that was quick. I said, yeah, the fresh air wasn't there. I'm not sure where it was at, but it wasn't outside.
oh man, it's
Oh,
miserable outside right now.
dude, it's like damn August here right
Yeah.
now, and it barely is May.
Um. So, but yeah, I have been known to convince myself that I don't like something just because everybody else does.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. All right. Well, we've hit an hour and we haven't done what's your favorite yet. So let's tackle that.
It's time for What's Your Favorite? Powered by Nakwa Adventure Gear. Power that fits in the palm of your hand.
All right. So, did you come up with what's your favorite?
So some of your questions kind of overlapped what I had. So one of them I'm going to have to change because I did have pizza toppings on there. All right. And then we've done a few of these what's your favorites too, so that has to go into play because some of the questions we've asked. So I had to look up some to come up with some other questions. All right. So the first one is what is or was your favorite travel destination trip that you've taken?
Gosh. So I've never been like a huge travel person. Um, but man. So shortly after we got married, my wife and I ended up going on a cruise with her family. Her grandparents decided to splurge for their 60th wedding anniversary and take the whole family on a cruise. and we did Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, Puerto Rico is where we took off out of, and it was either Saint Martin's or Saint Thomas. But the night that we stayed in Puerto Rico, we stayed in like the historic downtown Puerto Rico, and like the big historic hotel, right there near the governor's mansion. That was awesome. Just going through, like seeing like the historic side of it, and like we were there at the same time that all the protests were happening about the governor that was there. So it was really interesting to see that cultural side of it as well. But the food was phenomenal. And again, we stayed one night. And so we were there that night and we were there that morning, and then we got on the ship that afternoon. But we went and like walked near some of the forts. We had pina coladas at the place that invented the pina colada. We had so like me being the nature nerd, like we were there and I was like, oh my gosh, those are wild frigate birds, and like there were wild iguanas that were longer than I am tall. And so that was really, that is probably the one that I would like to repeat the most, is Puerto Rico.
Gotcha.
What about you? You're probably more well traveled than I am.
I've been a few places, and just so you know, if I cut off, it says my battery's low, but it's plugged up, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. So if it cuts off, that's why.
Is it plugged into the wall?
Yeah, it's plugged in everywhere. I just checked it, so
Okay.
I'm not sure. Something's wrong with it, but so ours was a trip when I was a kid, and we went from around Nashville, Tennessee, is where I grew up, and we went across to California in an RV with another family on a 2-week trip. And we went across on I-40, and then we came back. I think 64 may go all the way back across. It's just more northern than I-40. It was a 2-week trip, and we had all kinds of stops, and we stopped at a ton of places. So it's not really one specific destination, but that trip in general was like always sticks in my mind as the best trip, which I didn't even know the answer to that question. I hadn't even really thought about what my answer would be. I was just looking for good questions that weren't the same as what we had been asking. But then while you were answering, I'm like, well, mine's easy, because there's one trip that I always talk about. It's that one. And we went everywhere from Grand Canyon, Alcatraz, just everywhere you could want to stop at on that. We stopped at, and my dad and the other, we went with another family. So the dad switched off driving at night, and when we would wake up in the morning, we'd be to the next stop, and we'd get out, we'd do some things, and then we'd get back in and we'd go to the next stop. And they had it all planned out for 14 days, all around that loop and places to stop. And so Lake Tahoe, I mean, just anywhere that was closer along there that was a destination spot, we stopped at. So that's my favorite.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
So pralines and
done this one.
Yeah, I don't think so. Pralines and cream. If it's a Baskin Robbins, that's what they call it. It's called some different things, different places. But
Is that like butter pecan?
Is it like what?
Is that like butter pecan?
No, it's got caramel in it and praline nuts. It's just called pralines and cream. Yep. What about you?
Well, you said that's if it's Baskin Robbins. Is there another one?
Well, no, because I mean, I'd probably go Rocky Road number 2. That's the same anywhere. But they have that ice cream flavor different places. Just at Baskin Robbins, that's the original one where I had it, and that's what it was called there. But then you go somewhere else, it's the same ice cream, but it's just named a little bit different on different places. Yeah.
Okay. So pistachio is my favorite.
Hmm.
And mint chocolate chip is a close second, but it has to be green.
Yeah.
If it is not green, that means that it is not going to be sweet enough. It is going
Yeah,
to be too minty.
that's my wife's favorite, mint chocolate chip. My kids like it too.
Yeah, that's a solid one, but pistachio is my favorite.
Yeah. Both good choices. So are we doing another round?
Sure.
Okay. Crap, I forgot my other one. Do your other one and let me look it up if you have another one. If you don't, I'll look it up and we can wait 1 second.
Who's your favorite professional angler?
Oh, Gerald Swindell. No question about that. And I don't think it
Gene.
has. Yeah, I don't think it has as much to do with the angling side of it as just the entertainment value and kind of his storytelling ability, and just like, if there's one person I could be on the boat with and fish for a day, I mean, he's up there. I don't really think in the era that we're in now that anybody else is on that level for me as far as entertainment value. Now, obviously he's a great angler, but obviously he is more of the consistent angler that is going to get so many good finishes that at the end of the year he's going to be up there in points normally. He's not going to have to worry about getting the boot from wherever he's at. But I don't think he's going to go out. He's not going to go out and win 2 or 3 tournaments a year either. That's just not how he rolls. I mean, he's a junk fisherman. That's the way I like to fish, is just putting whatever you can put together and scramble. But more than anything, I like his outlook uh, on life and the stories that he shares and his attempt to shine light in the good places. What about for you?
I'll be honest with you, I had forgotten about G-Man. That's a solid pick. Um, so there were a few people that came to mind for me. Randy Howell was one, Ot Defoe was one, and Taku Ito was one.
All great choices. I like all 3 of those guys.
And like, so you've got guys like, so Taku Ito, it's all personality. Like, he does not fish the way I like to fish. Like, I have no like connection to him in terms of fishing, but his story and his personality are so amazing.
Agreed.
He's just infectious. Um, and then you've got, Randy Howe, is kind of, uh, he's got that long list of accomplishments. He's a solid angler. Um, he does all this stuff for, the King's Home, um, and just a great guy. Ott Defoe, he's right up there with Randy, and he's got that line of Rapala crankbaits. So, man, it's hard. In terms of personality, it's got to be Taku.
Yeah.
It's like, to be able to take somebody to be a like primarily smallmouth finesse fisherman, and to be able to capture someone like me to the point where I am a fan of him and I follow what he does. Like, our styles could not be more far apart, but like, he has captured me as a fan, and like I follow what he does. So I'm gonna say it's Taku.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So the other question I had is your favorite album, or I guess you know what an album is. You're
Oh
not
yeah.
that
Oh
young,
yeah.
so yeah, favorite album.
That's a hard one. Because I'm a music guy. So I'm going to say, oh man, I'm going to have to look up what the name of it was.
Well, you look up the name of it, and I'll go ahead and say mine. So mine, for some reason, is the band Live and Throwing Copper. Like, I don't know, for some reason, every song on that album to me is a great song. But I could listen to that album and just put it on repeat and not have to play another album. I mean, to me, it's that good. There's a couple others that are up there with it, but that one is my favorite.
All right. So I am going to say Take Everything by Seventh Day Slumber. So Seventh Day Slumber is this hard rock Christian metal group that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they put out a worship album. And they had songs like How Great Is Our God, Everlasting God, Mighty to Save, I Can Only Imagine, but like they played it in their style,
That's
like
cool.
headbanging metal music, and it really changed their whole outlook. They became a hard rock worship band that went from, just kind of doing like a metal concert to doing church services and stuff and having altar calls in their metal concerts and stuff. But it also, guys like me, that it's like, oh gosh, this song, I hate this song. But now all of a sudden it's got this crazy guitar riff and you're rocking out to it, and it's yeah, that one.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Um, let's see. I'm trying to see what else. Yeah, looking at it, yeah, they had a How Great Is Our God, I Can Only Imagine, Nothing But the Blood. So yeah,
Cool.
that's my favorite album.
Good deal.
All right. Well, you have anything you need to add to this one, man?
Man, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, you want to close this out in prayer?
Why don't you do it? Because I'm afraid this is going to cut off any second. I want to cut off right in the middle of it. And then I'll double up the next two.
All right. 10-4. God, thank you for this podcast and this opportunity to just kind of come on and have fun and talk about you, talk about the things that we enjoy and the things that we care about. And I pray that you continue to bless this podcast and the following that it has. Pray that you continue to bless Robert and myself, and pray that you meet the listener right where they are right now, no matter when it is that they're listening, and pray that you continue to put on a show in and through us and through this podcast and in our lives and in the lives of those that are listening. Thank you for what we're able to do, and thank you for just this opportunity to just kind of come on and talk about who is the best at what, and just kind of chase rabbit holes and enjoy what we're doing. We love you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, it made it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care and God bless.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Faith and Fishing podcast. Please consider supporting those that support us. Jade's Jigs lead-free finesse tackle. Use promo code FNF10 at jadesjigs.com for 10% off. Save your outdoors. Stop losing your gear. Use promo code FNFP15 at saveyourautdoors.com for 15% off. Omnia Fishing. Check out Premium, Premium Pro, and their Ambassador program. Use promo code FNF10 for 10% off at omniafishing.com. And if it's your first order, use promo code FNF15 for 15% instead. Mr. B Lure Company. High-quality handmade baits made right here in the U.S. MrBLureCompany.com. Use promo code faithnfishn for 15% off your first purchase. Get outdoors, pedal, and paddle. Check them out at the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or at shopgetoutdoors.com for all your paddling and cycling needs. And Nocqua Adventure Gear, lighting, power, and all the connectors at Nocqua.com. Please rate, review, subscribe on whatever app you're listening on. That's going to do it for this episode. Y'all take care and God bless.